So Jamie, it's 15 years since you came back to Guernsey. How has architecture changed in that time?
I think the quality of architecture has been improved hugely. That's partly partly to do with clients becoming more sophisticated, but I think in if you look at the past, 15 years ago there was a new gateway policy in terms of planning, which allowed for a more contemporary approach in building in Guernsey. And I think previous to that, Guernsey thought that we should be just copying the past, and essentially what this new policy has allowed for is a more contemporary approach to architecture. And I think, at the end of the day, collaboration between planners, architects, builders, who are all becoming more sophisticated and smarter. And Guernsey, everyone travels more, everyone looks out more. So our insular approach has become much more global.
You've got a name, if that's fair, for developing controversial projects. Do you think that's particularly warranted?
Nobody likes change, or everyone has a problem with change, I think, and that, we are at the forefront of that policy that allowed for change. So, you weren't matching a farmhouse next to a farmhouse. You were challenging that and juxtaposing a contemporary building next to an old one, or using old materials in a new way, which is what we try to do. I'm hugely interested in vernacular, but people, would say, that's appalling, you only do contemporary buildings. But actually I'm trying to evolve a language of architecture within the context of Guernsey, which is very site specific. I'm a local boy, I've come back here inspired by the landscape, the materials, the buildings, the sea, and that I think I'll always be challenging what that is and what our architecture is.
Is it part of the architect's job to provoke debate and discussion to push design forward?
There's a point where people sort of say, oh, well, we love the Grange and we love, but actually when the houses in the Grange were built after the grand tours of Italy, and that there was modern Georgian or modern Edwardian Victorian, people were appalled at it. And, and I think we have to move with the times. You just can't copy the past. That shows a lack of confidence, and that new materials, new ways of building, less energy, it's just amazing what makes those changes. So we're only reflecting and responding to the society that we live in, and that, yes, that does challenge the norm.
Now, what's the difference between designing in Guernsey compared to when you're in London? Are there many differences?
A lot of my London colleagues would say I'm very lucky in that we get horizontal sites rather than vertical ones. So we can open up the landscape or open up the interiors to the outside, which you're always fighting for space in London. But I think I approach it in exactly the same way, with a huge amount of respect for each site and the planners. So, when I came back, what I did was have a dialogue with the planners on every project early on, which, to a point, there was a report written, and that's now what everyone does. You have a pre-application meeting. We don't make applications until we feel we're ready, because we don't like getting rejections. I'm not going to say I'll get 100%, but actually what we don't do is get rejections, because we keep talking. And that I think the planners take us very seriously when we go in there. And okay, there's been certain times where politicians have said, I waste too much time and civil service money, because all our applications take a lot of work. But actually I think because of that we're enhancing the level of architecture over here, and debate and quality. And actually, these buildings are going to be there for 50 years maybe, and it's my legacy, or the island's legacy, and hopefully we are creating Guernsey's future heritage. Now, I know people would be shocked at that, but I think we are trying to reinterpret what the longhouse is and what the traditional vernacular Guernsey cottages were or are for a modern way of life. And the Guernsey people always responded to the way that they had to live at the time. And I think we're just doing that for the 21st century.
So how can Guernsey improve?
We need an integrated policy in terms of planning, transport, sustainability. I mean, Guernsey's always sort of, from our old privateering era, where we took a bit from France and took a bit from England, and and we're everyone's friend. And I think we need to carry on with that sort of policy in a way that we make sure that Guernsey is sustainable for the future. Energy-wise, we're not doing enough of our own self-production. Food-wise, empty greenhouses everywhere. We should be looking to sort of maximise our potential, because one day it could get a lot worse. And it's not locals for locals. It's just making sure that we take best advantage of all these different things. A central transport policy. Guernsey, if we developed our villages and maybe slightly more high-rise or mid-rise, then we would all go on the same bus into town to work. Whereas actually we are just suburban development everywhere, up and down every single road. So it's really hard to get a central transport policy. Yes, it's great that we've got the urban area now and the rural area, and one-for-one redevelopment works in the rural area, but we've sort of overdeveloped some of that.
If everything was perfect, what would be your dream project?
It's a very difficult one because every new project becomes the dream project or whatever. But I think it's very exciting at the moment that you're not often being given the chance to work with a client again, because actually if you work hard to start with, clients stay in their houses. But a young couple, we did a house for 12 years ago on not much money. They've sort of developed their family. They now have 2 children and want to move to the next house, but are educated. And that for me is a real delight, that actually all the hard work we did 10 years ago is there for them, and that they're pushing me now. So I think that'll be an interesting project over the next 2 years, to see how that develops, because it's then another 10 or 15-year project, because as they say, they will retire in that house and their children will go off to university. And so we will have followed them through from early 30s through to their 50s, late 60s, and that's really nice when you can develop that relationship with clients.
If you stopped working now, would you be satisfied with what you've achieved in your career?
When I met a client many moons ago in London who said, I want you to come to Guernsey and work on my house, and I was working in London at the time, and I sort of said at that point, I'd rather do 10 good houses rather than 100 bad ones. And I may have done about 200 projects in the island, but I'd say I'm at about 8 or 9, and I'll never reach 10. So I don't think I'll ever be satisfied, and that there's always room for improvement in architecture. Architects supposedly don't reach their peak or prime until about 55, 60. So I've got another 5 or 6 years of learning to even, before I sort of get to that point. And it's a privilege at the moment. We've got some amazing projects, amazing clients, a good dialogue with builders and the planners, and that's been hard work. So you reach that point where you can push ideas and test a little more with the right clients, and it's not all about money. It's about good ideas that can develop the right places for people to live. I mean, I'm just trying to create simple homes in a lifestyle for the 21st century, and that will change again, and I'm forever learning.